Welcome to Podcast 360, powered by the Podcast Academy. In 3 questions answered in 60 seconds each, you'll experience a 360-degree view of podcasting from a lineup of industry experts. The hosts of your favorite podcasts will take turns interviewing each other, creating a chain of podcast knowledge and perspective. Let's meet our industry experts. Today's host is...
Hi, I'm Tom Merritt, host of Daily Tech News show Sword and Laser, It's a Thing, and a bunch of other shows. You heard me last week when I was talking to my It's a Thing co-host Molly Wood, who is the host of several podcasts herself, including Everybody in the Pool.
And who is our guest this week?
Hi, I'm Veronica Belmont, host of Sword and Laser with Tom. I'm also a director of product at Electronic Arts, working on user-generated content initiatives.
First, the game before the game. We ask our guests to share 2 truths and a lie. Our hosts will guess which is the lie, and we'll find out the answer together at the end of our conversation. Let's play Podcast 360.
Veronica, thank you for joining me on Podcast 360. I have the same problem with you that Molly had with me last week, which is we have done so many shows together. It's difficult for us to think that we don't know everything about you. Now, see, last week, it was hard for me to figure out how to tell a lie. But on the other end, I'm like, well, actually, do I actually know as much as I think I do about Veronica?
Yeah, I was trying to think, like, what have I not told you in our friendship? So that's going to be tricky.
All right. So if anybody doesn't know, Podcast 360 kicks off with a round of 2 truths and a lie. Veronica is going to give us the facts and a lie. It's 2 facts and a lie. I'll make a guess, but Veronica, hold that answer until the end of the conversation. You'll reveal the lie towards the end. Are you ready?
I am so ready.
All right, let's go.
All right. These are all thematically similar. I was hoping that would trip you up a little bit. I once worked at a radio station where I made cappuccinos for Dee Snider of Twisted Sister. Okay? I gave the band Franz Ferdinand their first experience with quesadillas in the United States. I went to high school with Michael Bolton's daughter in Connecticut, and she was not in choir, weirdly.
All right, so you did a really smart thing, because I know some of these are partly true, but you did the good thing, was you're like, well, I made cappuccinos for Dee Snider. I don't know, maybe you made cappuccinos for Bono or somebody else, right? And then you put in that she was not in choir, weirdly, which makes me want to think it's true. But that may be what you are thinking that I should think.
How does my brain work, Tom? You think you know me so well. How does it work?
All right. For now, I'm going to go with the Dee Snider. I'm going to say that, because I know you worked at a radio station, that you didn't make cappuccinos for Dee Snider.
Am I supposed to tell you which one was? Nope. No? I hold on to it?
Not yet. Not yet.
Okay.
Now comes the 360 part. I'm going to ask you 3 questions related to podcasting, and then try to read your subtext to figure out what the lie really is.
Oh, all right. I like it.
But everybody in the audience gets to learn more about podcasting. So once we get through that rapid round of answers, we will pick one of the subjects we covered to go more in depth. So your job during this is to not only give the 60-second answers, but think about which one of these you want to expand more on when we're done. All right?
Sure. Yeah.
All right, question number 1. What to you, Veronica Belmont, is a podcaster?
To me, a podcaster is a subject matter expert, and which is very similar in some ways to a product manager. So I think that the best podcasters are either experts in their field or very interested in that field and able to ask the right questions, start the right conversations, find the right people to talk to. They're passionate. And at the end of the day, that's what I think is a true podcaster. They care enough to continue doing it week after week, month after month.
Yeah, I'm with you. It's the enthusiasm for the topic. I mean, I guess technically anybody's a podcaster if they put a podcast out. But yeah, I like where you went with it, which is, what makes a good podcaster? What makes a podcaster that people want to listen to? And it's that enthusiasm. That's a great answer.
Thank you.
All right, number 2, if you could interview a fictional character on a podcast, who would you like to summon into existence and talk to?
A fictional character. Oh, man. My first inclination, the first thing that popped into my mind is Kate Daniels from the Alona Andrews series. I'm not sure why she popped into my head.
Interesting. Yeah. That's not what I would have guessed.
I don't know why she popped into my mind either, so I'm just going to go with it because I only have 60 seconds.
For sure.
She's a magic wielder. She lives in a kind of post-apocalyptic Atlanta, where things have gone very haywire. Magic and technology kind of battle for dominance. It's a great urban fantasy series. She has a lot of complex relationships with the people around her, boyfriend slash spouse slash pack leader, her children, her father. And I think she would just have, and she's quirky and smart and tough. And I think she would make a great guest to just ask about her experiences.
Do you think she'd do it if you asked?
No. No, I don't. Yeah, honestly.
Tough get.
Yeah, tough get. Yeah, for sure.
All right. Last of the 3 questions. As a podcast listener, what kind of content do you like from a podcast? What makes a podcast enjoyable to listen to for you?
I like to take things that are applicable to my life. That's kind of been what I've been doing lately versus more storytelling aspects. So things like I listen to Dr. Becky's Good Inside because I'm trying to be a halfway decent parent, and so being able to get tips and tricks on how to raise children by being sturdy guardians for them, I think has been really helpful. I know he gets a lot of crap. I like the Hubes. I like Huberman. I'm a fan of some of his interviews and thoughts, and I know he can be a complicated character sometimes, but I do enjoy the conversations he has with his guests, and I like to take some of those learnings and apply them to my own training.
Yeah. So it goes back to the first question a little bit, that enthusiasm, but also usefulness, what you get out of it too. Well, that was fun. Did you have fun?
I did have fun. Yeah. I like the pithy answers. I think I have a tendency for over-explaining, so it's nice to have that time constraint.
Those limits spark creativity, for sure. I can say from recent experience.
Podcast 360 will be back in just a moment. And we're back with Podcast 360.
Well, thank you for that round of answers. We do have the opportunity to revisit one of those subjects. Was there one of them that you'd like to go back to and expand on?
Yeah, I guess what is a podcaster is super, I think especially an interesting topic right now, considering just how prolific podcasting has become. I mean, it's almost hard to say what is a podcaster at this point because so many people are telling different kinds of stories in different ways. And almost the only commonality they have at this point is being able to offer a subscription for people to listen to. It's just there's no standard format for what is a podcast anymore. So defining what is a podcaster really has broadened so much in the last 15 years. I mean, we've been doing Sword and Laser for 16 years, and Buzz Out Loud, the first podcast we did together, was before iTunes was even a thing, and we had to handwrite the XML files to get the podcast out there in the world. And so,
well, you did.
I did. Yeah, you never had to do that. So it was a very different experience than it is now. And I was just thinking about this the other day, how Serial really kind of kicked things off and brought podcasting to the public in a way that nothing else kind of had before. Maybe This American Life in a way, but Serial kind of launched it into the stratosphere.
Yeah. Well, we've been talking a lot on Daily Tech News Show about how the podcast is a show now. And so it may be delivered on an RSS feed, but it is also available on YouTube, and we do shorts and TikToks. And so it's more than a podcast, which makes me wonder, is a podcast going to become just a format for shows?
Right.
Or is there something endemic like radio where a podcast always has a definition around it? It's like, no, that is clearly the podcast version of that show.
That's a great question. And something else I've also been thinking about is how it's almost there's this aspect of being a podcaster that I think has a connotation now that didn't exist before, where especially, how do I put this? Just another white guy with a podcast,
Yeah,
there's a stigma.
It's a punchline
associated with it now. And no offense to you being a white guy with a podcast.
I am that.
You are that thing, but also this is not directed towards you.
Accurate.
But it's interesting, huh? It's become so commonplace that it's now a stigma in some ways. I think that's part of
the journey, right? It went from what is that to oh, can you make money at that? To oh, now it's a punchline. And I think that's maybe the last or the second to last evolution before it just becomes natural. It just becomes a thing like radio or TV or anything else. Yeah,
100%.
All right. It is time now for me to double down on my final guess on what is your lie.
I don't think I gave you anything new.
Oh, you don't, do you?
I don't. And I really hope you weren't Googling things.
I definitely was not Googling things, and I also don't think you gave me any insights into which one of these is a lie. I'm going to stick with it. I'm going to say it's the Dee Snider of Twisted Sister. You once worked at a radio station and made cappuccinos, but it was not for Dee Snider. But Veronica, please tell us, what was your lie?
My lie was I did not go to high school with Michael Bolton's daughter in Connecticut. Michael Bolton is from Connecticut. He does have family in Connecticut. He does have daughters that are of a similar age. But no, I did work at a radio station where I made cappuccinos for Dee Snider. He was the morning show host at WMRQ Radio 104 in Hartford, Connecticut. Yeah, very funny. Super nice guy. But I was a lowly intern and I did make cappuccinos for him. While I was a studio intern at Q Division Studios in Somerville, Mass, we welcomed Franz Ferdinand after the drop of their first record. And I had to go get them lunch. And I got them quesadillas rather, from Anna's Taqueria in Somerville.
I definitely remembered the Franz Ferdinand thing.
That was on my LinkedIn for a minute.
Yeah. I didn't even give that one concern. I should have known. I was like, the nod and the choir, you're too clever. And I even identified your gambit, and I still fell for it.
You did.
That was a good
almost
trap.
thought I shouldn't have put that in there because it gave it it made it stand out too much.
It did, but it still worked. Well done.
Thank you.
Well, Veronica, you are, of course, a wonderful guest. Thank you for sharing yourself, your podcast, your story. Can you let listeners know where they can find you? Any social media pages, websites, podcasts, shout outs, whatever you'd like to say.
Sure. Yeah, you can find Sword and Laser at swordandlaser.com. We have new episodes every other week. We are a science fiction and fantasy podcast, book club, and membership club. And we have a great time chatting all about different books of different genres, giving our opinions, and it's a lot of fun. And Tom and I have been doing it for a very long time. You can also find more about me at veronicabelmont.com, and I primarily post over on Threads, and my handle there is @Veronica.
Fantastic. Thank you, Veronica Belmont, for being our guest, and a big thanks to the Podcast 360 team for letting me play here. This was really fun.
Thank you for listening to Podcast 360, where you experience a 360-degree view of podcasting. Special thanks to the Podcast Academy and DCP Entertainment. Follow us on social media at The Ambies and at DCP Official on Instagram. And subscribe wherever you get your podcasts so that you never miss an episode.